She kissed me goodbye, said she was going on a girls' trip. But 2 days later, I opened a tracking app and watched her little blue dot move straight into a dark warehouse, nowhere near the beach town she'd promised. What I saw next, it didn't just break my heart, it changed everything I thought I knew about my own wife. And trust me, what happened after that left me questioning everything. Welcome to Revenge with Luke. Let's uncover what really happened. She slipped out of the bedroom before dawn, pausing at the door to murmur something about needing fresh air and a clear head. I barely stirred, bleary-eyed, convinced her long day at work had caught up with her. In the kitchen, I found her leaning against the counter, fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped ceramic mug. Steam rose from the dark liquid inside, wreathing her face in foggy tendrils. When I asked if she was all right, she offered a small, strained smile and said she was fine, just worn out from the endless strings of meetings and spreadsheets she'd sworn would never end. She brushed past me toward the sink, her perfume faint but familiar, and I watched her shoulders slump as though she carried an invisible burden. I wanted to ask what was wrong, to demand she say more than that tired word, but I sensed the night had frayed her nerves. Instead, I wrapped my arms around her waist, and she let me, though she didn't lean in the way she normally would. Her lips remained a breath away from my cheek. In that hushed kitchen, her silence spoke louder than any confession. By the time she drifted back to bed, her apartment already flickering to life behind closed eyelids, my own mind woke fully to the oddity of her whispered excuses. She said she needed solitude, a moment alone to sort through lingering stress. There had been rumors of a promotion at her firm, demands on her time I barely understood. Yet something in her tone hinted at more than work. I lay there listening to her slow, even breaths, convinced that if I waited, she'd offer an honest answer. Morning came wrapped in pale light, and she was gone before I even noticed her absence. The front door closed gently, though the hollow thud echoed in my chest. A lingering coffee cup on the counter bore her lipstick stain, unmoved since yesterday's meeting. I traced my finger around its rim, tasting the faint bitterness of doubt. Today, she'd returned from her girls' trip, she'd said, lighter and refreshed. But as I watched the empty street through the window, I wondered if the whispered excuses were only the beginning of her secrets. Her suitcase sat open on the bed, half-packed with the careful precision I'd always admired. Folded jeans lay next to silky dresses I'd never seen her wear, vivid colors out of step with her usual muted palette. She knelt beside it, methodically tucking in folded underwear and carefully rolling shirts. Every motion seemed deliberate, almost ritualistic. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, pretending to read an email on my phone while I watched her. "Need help?" I asked, voice casual. She glanced up, startled, then smiled and shook her head. "I've got it. Honestly, it's just clothes." She zipped the bottom compartment, then ran a hand over the taut fabric as if assessing her work. "A few extras, in case I decide to do something fun." Her tone held that same practiced brightness she used when deflecting any concern I might have. I moved closer, lifting a corner of the suitcase's interior flap to glimpse a slim, black envelope tucked beneath a neatly folded scarf. "What's that?" I asked, tilting my head. Her eyes flicked to the envelope, and for a fraction of a second, her poised demeanor wavered. "Just tickets," she said quickly, snatching the envelope and sliding it into her purse. "To the show the girls are going to. You know how much they love theater." I studied her face, searching for the flicker of guilt or hesitation that might explain her furtive movement. Instead, she adjusted the straps on her tote bag and stood, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "I'll be back Sunday afternoon," she said, fastening the last clasp on her jewelry box, a delicate circle of silver bangles. "Don't wait up." She flashed another one of those smiles, the kind that ends conversations before they begin. I glanced at the neat pile of clothes, dresses I'd never seen, shoes I didn't recognize, and then at her purse, where that mysterious envelope hid. My pulse quickened. Was she simply excited for a weekend with friends, or was something else tucked beneath the smiles and neatly packed garments? I inhaled, telling myself not to overthink it. But as she swung the suitcase closed and lifted it effortlessly off the bed, A tremor of doubt settled in the pit of my stomach. She paused in the doorway, suitcase in hand, looked back at me, and for a heartbeat our eyes met. "See you soon," she whispered. Then she turned and walked away, the click of her heels fading down the hallway. Alone with her neatly packed secrets, I realized I didn't know where she was really going or why I felt suddenly adrift in the space she left behind. I found a cup on the kitchen counter when I went in for my morning coffee. Her favorite mug, chipped at the rim, still half full of cold espresso. A single lipstick mark imprinted on the handle was all that remained of her presence. I stared at it, the bitter scent of caffeine mingling with something else, the acrid tang of suspicion. She'd been gone nearly 24 hours, and already the empty cup felt like a silent accusation. I carried it to the sink, but paused, leaving it where it was. My hands hovered over the faucet as I considered rinsing it out, erasing the evidence of her haste, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I nudged the cup toward me and pressed my finger against the stain on the handle, smearing the crimson against white ceramic. I tried to imagine her smile as she sipped that morning, the casual warmth of her greeting, but my memory felt distant, like trying to reconstruct a dream from fragments. The clock on the microwave ticked louder in the quiet apartment. I paced the narrow strip of tiles between sink and stove, glancing at the cup each time I circled back. It should have just been an ordinary morning. Toast, news on the TV, a quick text to check in. Instead, the abandoned cup was a remnant of her unspoken reasons, her unexplained journey. My phone buzzed with my mother's name on the screen. "Hey, Mom." I forced a light tone. She asked how the coffee was, and I hesitated. Told her it tasted fine, that Sarah's girls' trip was probably more about wine than workout classes. She laughed, but I could hear the concerned tremor in her voice. The line felt too bright, too casual, like trying to mask a storm with a lullaby. I ended the call, leaving a polite "love you" hanging in the air. Then I poured fresh coffee, the dark liquid swirling in my mug, filling the kitchen with steam. I carried it to the living room and sat on the edge of the sofa, the abandoned cup still on the counter behind me. It loomed like a question mark, demanding to be answered. I wondered what else she'd left behind, and, more importantly, what secrets had packed themselves away with her suitcase. As I stared at the empty chair across from me, I realized that the quiet left in her wake was louder than any words she could have whispered. I'd expected a text from her by midday, something breezy about brunch plans or a staged photo of smiles and sun-drenched cocktails. Instead, my phone dinged with an ominous message. "Flight canceled. Need to stay an extra day. Sorry." The words were functional, almost sterile, devoid of the playful punctuation she usually sprinkled throughout her texts. I reread them twice, my heart thudding as I parsed every syllable. No explanation, no apology beyond that single, clipped word. I stared at the screen, thumb poised over call, but hesitated. My finger hovered as if waiting for permission I didn't feel entitled to. So I typed back, "Everything okay?" and watched the ellipsis blink a beat too long before disappearing. Then, "Fine. Talk soon." That "fine" felt like a door slamming shut. The afternoon stretched ahead of me, empty of any meaning beyond the persistent thrum of unanswered questions. I started the laundry, folding t-shirts and socks we'd packed for her weekend retreat. Each familiar item felt foreign, clothes worn but never loved, reminders of a life I no longer recognized. I went through the motions, but my mind traced her steps, the airport line, the boarding gate, the moment she must have learned her flight was grounded. Did she grin in resignation, or did her face tighten at the inconvenience? Outside, the sky shifted from pale blue to pewter as clouds gathered on the horizon. Rain threatened. A sudden thunderhead rolled in, rattling window panes. I found myself at the balcony, breathing in the charged air, imagining her stranded in some unfamiliar terminal, suitcase at her feet, forced to navigate an unexpected solitude that mirrored my own. Then the phone buzzed again. "Be safe," followed by an emoji, neither comforting nor cold. I traced the words with my thumb, turning them over like a stone in my pocket. She was safe, far safer than I felt. Something in her tone pointed to a pivot, a shift that I hadn't seen coming. Plans, like trust, could be canceled on a moment's notice. I pocketed the phone and watched the first drops of rain spatter the pavement below. Suddenly, the apartment felt too small, the walls closing in around me. I realized I needed movement, a way to chase answers instead of waiting for them. So I grabbed my keys and coat, and in the hush before the storm, I stepped into the widening puddles, determined to find what lay behind her sudden change of plans. I opened the tracking app, watching the little dots scrawl across the map like an anxious heartbeat. It led me away from the coastal town she'd promised, a cluster of cafes and art galleries, and up into the tangle of highways heading inland. My pulse sped as I zoomed in. A name I didn't recognize labeled the pin: Linwood Conference Center. Conference Center? That didn't fit girls' trip or wine tour. I grabbed my jacket and keys, tossed my phone into my pocket, and raced out the door. The sky was still bruised from the storm, low clouds scudding across the horizon, casting long shadows over empty streets. I felt the quiet hum of the app in my hand, each vibration a reminder of her presence just out of sight, hidden behind walls I'd never imagined. When I pulled into the conference center parking lot, a row of nondescript vans idled at the curb. The building was a low-slung brick slab, windows dark and unwelcoming. I parked a few spaces away, heart pounding, and watched her leap inside. I waited a moment, then slipped from the car, palms sweating on the sleeves of my jacket. Inside, the lobby was empty except for a jittery receptionist scrolling through her phone. I flashed the tracking map on my screen. "Is there a Linwood Conference Center here?" I asked quietly. She looked up, startled, then pointed toward a hallway. Down there, past the restrooms. I followed her directions, the corridor lights flickering overhead. The walls were lined with bland conference posters, keynote speakers, seminar schedules, corporate logos. At the end of the hall, a set of double doors stood slightly ajar. Through the crack, I saw the backs of folding chairs and a projector screen glowing with a blank white light. I stepped closer, the app still guiding me. My foot nudged the door, and I slipped inside. Rows of chairs sat empty, but the stage at the front held a long table with name placards. The placard in the center read her name, and underneath it, in smaller letters, the logo of a high-stakes financial workshop. My breath hitched. She told me one story, packed her suitcase for another, and here I was face to face with something I didn't recognize. The projector clicked on, casting her profile photo onto the screen. She stood in a sharp blazer, smiling with confidence I'd never seen at home. As the doors clicked shut behind me, I realized tracking her trail had led me deeper into her secrets than I was ready to go. The power in the conference room hissed and died, plunging me into darkness save for the glow of my phone screen. I fumbled for the flashlight app and swept its beam over the chairs. Empty. The projector flashed one last static frame before going black. In that sudden silence, I heard the soft click of distant footsteps. I slipped behind the table, heart hammering as I pressed my back against the cool wood. The beam quivered on a stack of folders stamped confidential. I grabbed the top one, yanked it open, and scanned the contents by the harsh white light. Expense reports, hotel invoices, a detailed itinerary that didn't resemble a girl's weekend. Each line item traced luxury suites, business class flights, even payments to a private security firm. My wife wasn't here to unwind. She was here to work some shadowy deal. A faint murmur drifted from the back of the hall. I slid off the stage and hugged the wall, inching toward the voice. Peeking around a corner, I saw her, alone, leaning over a laptop at a small table. Her face was illuminated by the screen as she typed a message with unhurried precision. Only she wasn't on a beach. She was analyzing spreadsheets populated with names I didn't recognize. The name of the firm, Aurora Capital, glowed on her screen. My chest tightened. What was she doing with Aurora Capital? And why hadn't she trusted me with this? The footsteps grew louder, approaching. I ducked behind a row of chairs, brittle panic clawing its way into my thoughts. I tapped her name on my phone, desperate for context, but the signal dropped. Dead zone. She stood up, closing the laptop with a soft click. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle the gasp, but it slipped out as a breathy whimper. She spun, eyes wide in the dim light, registering my shadow before recognition and betrayal flared across her face. I hurtled toward her, the flashlight beam dancing wildly. "What are you doing?" I demanded, voice cracking. She took a step back, hands raised in a motion I knew was meant to calm, but instead ignited every doubt I'd ever had. She started, but the words died as another light flicked on behind us, revealing a line of suited executives materializing from the shadows. Their expressions were unreadable. My pulse thundered in my ears as realization smashed into me. I had stumbled into something far bigger than suspicion, and I had no clear path back. I found the address scrawled in her handwriting on a yellow sticky note tucked inside my jacket, 182 Fairview Lane. I'd never seen it before, and Google Maps spat out a remote cul-de-sac on the outskirts of town, far from any tourist spots or nightlife. My heart thudded as I navigated the narrow lanes, lined with overgrown hedges and flickering street lamps. Each mile took me deeper into a part of her life I'd never known. When I turned onto Fairview Lane, only one house stood under the dim glow of a porch light, a sprawling Victorian with peeling paint and darkened windows. The yard was unkempt, the gravel drive scattered with fallen leaves, and a single, rusted mailbox. My pulse raced as I pulled into the drive, the crunch of gravel under my tires echoing in the silent night. I stepped out, the air crisp and heavy with unseen secrets. I approached the front door, its white paint chipped and warped. A brass door knocker shaped like a lion's head stared back at me. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the knocker, but instead wrapped my fist against the door in two sharp knocks. They sounded loud enough to shatter the stillness. Inside, I heard soft footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, revealing a dim foyer lined with antique furniture. And there she was. My wife, but not the woman I thought I knew. She stood beneath a halo of light, dressed in a tailored suit that had never existed in our shared closet, hair pinned back in a severe twist. Her eyes widened, but she didn't step back. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice calm but rigid, as though she had rehearsed the line for this moment. I held up the sticky note. 182 Fairview Lane. "What is this place?" Her gaze flicked to the note, then back to me. "I thought you'd never find it." The door opened wider, and I stepped inside, the musty scent of old wood and leather enveloping me. The foyer light revealed walls hung with framed certificates and newspaper clippings bearing her name, achievements I'd never heard of. Keynote speaker, board member of some clandestine foundation, whispers of financial deals with shadowy investors. I swallowed hard, every familiar piece of our life fracturing in that moment. She closed the door behind me and turned the deadbolt with a quiet snap. "Welcome to my other world," she said, slipping her phone from her pocket. On the screen, a calendar entry glowed. "Meeting with Aurora Capital. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock." In that unfamiliar house on Fairview Lane, I felt the ground shift beneath me. I was no longer husband, but intruder, and the life I knew was slipping farther into the shadows. The map she used was more than a simple navigation tool. It was a mosaic of hidden corridors and clandestine waypoints. Late that night, I spread printouts across the oak dining table. Routes she'd taken, locations she'd marked with tiny red pins, and overlapping circles that suggested secret meetings I'd never been invited to. My finger traced a line through downtown rooftops, underground parking garages, even a disused warehouse by the river. Each mark whispered of shadows. I zoomed in on a particularly dense cluster near the docks. There, beside the old grain elevator, was a blue star that didn't correspond to any public address. I pulled up satellite view and held my breath. The structure looked abandoned, roof caved in, windows boarded. She'd been there twice last week. What was she doing in a ruin that might collapse at any moment? Heart pounding, I grabbed my coat and dashed into the night, map printouts in my pocket. The air was damp and salty as I approached the waterfront, the distant hum of freighters shifting cargo like restless giants. Streetlights flickered, casting spindly shadows across cracked pavement. The warehouse loomed ahead, its silhouette a jagged tooth against the water. I slipped through a gap in the fence and crept toward a side door, half-hinged and rusted. Inside, beams of moonlight sliced through holes in the roof, spotlighting stacks of wooden crates. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor as I advanced, each crate stamped with the same Aurora Capital emblem I'd seen on her laptop screen. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then I heard her voice, soft, measured, coming from behind a wall of pallets. I crouched low and saw her, silhouette backlit by the pale moonlight. She was flanked by two men in dark suits, papers spread across a makeshift table. One man gestured to a map similar to mine, then tapped a specific dock number. She nodded, adjusting her blazer as she spoke. My breath caught as I recognized the coded language. Shipping schedules, crate manifests, off-the-books transfers. She wasn't just meeting with Aurora Capital. She was orchestrating shipments of what I didn't yet know. Was it merchandise? Documents? Something more dangerous? The beam of a flashlight streaked across the floor behind me. Panic surged as I bolted for the door, crate corners scraping against my knee. A shout rang out, "Stop! Who's there?" I ran, guided by moonlight reflecting off the choppy water. Each step a testament to how far I'd fallen from being her partner to a man chasing shadows on a map. I paused at the edge of the alley, gasping for breath, and ran a hand over my face to clear the sting of sweat and salt water. Across the street, a figure leaned against a lamppost, watching me. The stranger's face was half hidden beneath a hood, but I recognized the bearing. Quiet confidence, eyes that missed nothing. My pulse stuttered. Was this another of her associates, or someone who'd noticed me slipping through Aurora's operations? He stepped forward, the lamplight revealing sharp features and a scar tracing his jaw. He didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, he held out a small recording device. "She's been expecting you," he said, voice low but unhurried. "You should listen." I hesitated, chest tight, then took the device. The stranger's gaze flicked to the warehouse behind me, then back to my face. "You're in over your head. You need to decide if you're part of this or not." He melted back into shadow, disappearing as silently as he'd appeared. My fingers trembled around the recorder. I pressed play, and her voice filled the night, crisp and clear. "And if he shows, let him hear everything. No more lies." The message ended with the click of her laptop closing. My breath caught. She planned for me to find out. I sprinted back down the street, clutching the device like a lifeline. Questions galloped through my mind. Why record this? Was it a trap or an olive branch? Back in my car, I slid in, hands shaking, and hit the button again to replay the message. Her words echoed. No more lies. It felt like a warning and a plea. Headlights cut through the alley's darkness as a black SUV eased to a stop. The passenger window rolled down to reveal her, hair pinned loose around her face, suit jacket replaced by a leather coat. "We need to talk," she said, voice soft but urgent. I swallowed, the recorder warm against my thigh. "I know," I whispered. She closed the window with a soft click. The engine idled. "Then follow me. And trust me, at least for tonight." I glanced at the empty street behind me. Bellevue's skyline, a distant outline. With a nod, I started the engine and pulled out, every mile carrying me further into the stranger's warning and her unspoken world. The SUV pulled to a stop in front of a nondescript brick building buried between a closed bakery and a tattoo parlor. Its windows were tinted and the front door bore no sign. She handed me a key fob, and the door clicked open before I even pressed the button. Inside, a narrow corridor led to a steel stairwell that descended 2 flights beneath the street. At the bottom, she tapped a code into a keypad. The concrete walls gave way to a heavy door that swung inward on silent hinges. The apartment beyond was unexpected. Warm lamplight, a plush sectional facing a wall of monitors, shelves lined with binders, and a kitchenette stocked with fresh fruit and coffee. It was a sanctuary built for secrecy. She crossed the room and pulled a folder from shelf. "This is everything you need to know," she said, opening it on a small glass table. Inside were her meeting notes, agendas for Aurora Capital investors, dossiers on key players, bank transfers, even her personal justification, a succinct memo titled Project Helix. My breath caught at the name. It sounded like a code name from a spy novel, not something my wife would lead. I sank onto the sofa and flipped through the pages. Each document revealed another layer. Contracts signed in offshore accounts, shell corporations registered in untraceable jurisdictions, timestamps of her covert departures. She sat beside me, watching my expression. "I wanted to protect you," she said quietly. But when it started affecting our life, I froze everyone out. I looked up. "Why Helix?" She closed the folder gently. "Because it's about transformation, breaking down old structures to build something new." Her eyes held a mixture of pride and regret. I thought I could control it, keep you safe while I handled the dirty work. But I underestimated how it would change me. I set the folder aside and took her hand. "You lied to me." My voice was softer than I expected. She nodded. "I know, and I'm sorry, but I need your help now." The monitors flickered as she tapped a remote. Surveillance feeds from Aurora warehouses, live data streams, secure communications, all laid bare in the hidden apartment's glow. The place hummed with purpose, and I felt the weight of its promise. She had invited me into her world, not as a passenger, but as an ally. I exhaled slowly. "Okay," I said. "Show me everything." She settled onto the edge of the sofa, the glow from the monitors casting soft shadows across her face. I poured 2 cups of coffee from the sleek thermal carafe on the side table, the rich aroma filling the quiet space. I handed her 1 cup, and we sat side by side, the binders and folders spread across the glass table before us. "I never meant to shut you out," she began, voice hushed. But once Aurora demanded absolute secrecy, I couldn't risk a slip. Her fingers traced the title of the Project Helix memo. I thought I could compartmentalize my life, wife, mother, executive, but it became impossible. I sipped my coffee and leaned forward. "When did you realize it was too much?" She stared at the swirling liquid in her cup, as though the answer might rise to the surface. "Last month, I missed Amelia's recital rehearsal because of a late-night negotiation. She cried when I got home. Her middle name is Joy, but that night, she felt none." My chest tightened. I saw the conference center files, the warehouses. "This isn't charity work." She shook her head. "No. Aurora's clients. Some are humanitarian, but others are less savory. Arms deals disguised as mining contracts, data acquisitions that skirt legal lines." I thought I could steer them right, but the line blurred. I exhaled. "Why involve me now?" She met my gaze, her eyes steady. "Because I need someone I can trust implicitly. Someone who knows me beyond the facade. And because they're onto us. Last night's warehouse, there were cameras I didn't account for." Her voice shook. "I didn't want you endangered, but now I can't protect you if I keep you in the dark." The monitors flicked as a new video feed popped up. A corporate conference room, Aurora CEO speaking calmly about expanding pilot projects. She tapped the screen. "That's our deadline," she said. "In 1 week, they'll expect a final report. If we don't deliver, they'll come after me or us." My mind raced. "What do you need me to do?" She placed her hand over mine. "Help me gather evidence. Expose the deals that cross the line. We'll need to trace the money, find documents they can't deny. You're the one person with no ties to their world." I nodded, resolve solidifying. "Then we start now." We leaned over the table together, unearthing dossiers and highlighted passages, 2 allies in a late-night pact. The hidden apartment's hush thrummed with purpose, and for the first time since her whispered excuses, I felt part of something real, shared mission, shared risk, and perhaps a chance at redemption. She handed me a folder thick with receipts, emails, and scanned contracts, each a fragment of a larger puzzle. We spread them across the coffee table, overlapping like shards of a broken mirror reflecting half-truths and hidden agendas. My eyes darted from one page to the next. A line item for consulting services paid to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. An email thread discussing the discreet transfer of equipment to an unnamed client. A signed non-disclosure agreement that promised severe penalties for leaks. I picked up a printed bank statement and traced a bold transfer of $2.4 million marked only as Project Helix, Phase 2. "This," I said, voice low, "is more than investment. She nodded, her jaw clenched. That's where Aurora funds covert operations, logistics, security, extraction. They call it phase, but it's movement of assets, human and material. I tapped a highlighted paragraph in a memorandum outlining safe zones and authorized personnel. These coordinates, they're not donation sites. She shook her head. No, they're staging grounds. I signed off on some of them, thinking they were remote research facilities. I didn't realize until now who would end up there. I exhaled, swirling the last of my cold coffee. We need context. She retrieved her laptop from a side shelf and booted it up. Password entered. She navigated to a secure drive loaded with correspondence. We watched as her messages appeared. Negotiations with a client codenamed Orpheus, risk assessments for asset recovery, discussions of satellite imagery to identify target locations. Her eyes glistened with regret. Each fragment I justified as necessary. Each email I convinced myself was harmless. But when you stitch them together, her voice trailed off. I closed the gap between us and placed a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. We'll expose it. But we have to be precise. Every fragment has to form the whole truth. We worked in silence, piecing together dates, names, amounts. By dawn, a rough timeline lay before us. Recruitment of contractors in Singapore, asset movements through Dubai, final assembly, and possible extraction in a disputed territory. The fragments coalesced into a terrifying mosaic of collusion and concealment. She stared at our handiwork, exhaustion and determination mingling in her gaze. This is the truth, she whispered, and now we have to decide how to use it. I met her eyes and nodded. Together, we gathered the fragments, ready to shine light into the darkest corners of her secret world. Thought for a couple of seconds. He emerged from the shadows of the hidden apartment's hallway, tall and composed, with sharp features softened only by the tired lines around his eyes. She introduced him quietly as Marcus, formerly with her firm, now the one person she trusted more than anyone else. His handshake was firm, and when he looked at me, I saw a flicker of recognition, not of me, but of the mission we'd all become part of. Marcus pulled up a chair at the table strewn with documents. I've cross-referenced the offshore transactions, he said, voice low, efficient. He slid a tablet across to me, displaying a network of shell companies and intermediary accounts. This, he tapped the screen, is where Aurora's money funnels through before it ends up funding Black Ops-style ventures. His calm delivery belied the gravity of the information. I leaned closer, tracing the lines on the diagram. And you've been working with her from the inside? He nodded. She recruited me when I uncovered irregularities in our board meetings, transactions that didn't match any presentation she'd given. I wanted out, but she convinced me to stay to help steer their power toward legitimate projects. His gaze shifted to her. I owe you that much. She folded her arms by her waist, gaze steady. We need that network exposed. And I need someone to protect the flow of truth once we go public. Marcus exchanged a brief look with her, then back to me. I've arranged secure servers. Once we upload the evidence, we'll have a global audience before they can trace it back to us. I felt the weight of that promise sink in. And then Marcus allowed himself a small half-smile. Then they'll have to answer questions, governments, press, oversight committees. We'll force accountability. She handed me a printed memo. This outlines the roles. You'll handle the financial disclosures. Marcus will manage the technical release, and I'll deliver the narrative. My story of how I discovered the rot from within. Her voice was resolute, yet I detected vulnerability beneath the steel. I swallowed, heart hammering. This was her secret partner, his expertise complementing hers, and now mine. The room seemed to pulse with collective purpose as I closed the gap between us. All right, I said, voice steady. Let's finish this. As we leaned in over the table, plotting our next move, the hidden apartment felt less like a sanctuary of lies and more like the command center for justice, driven by a secret partnership forged in shadows and truths alike. I hovered over my laptop, fingers trembling as I opened the spreadsheet Marcus had prepared. Rows upon rows of transactions unfurled before me, Dates, amounts, account numbers, each one a thread in the tangled web she'd helped weave. I scrolled to a highlighted entry, a $1.2 million transfer to Orion Holdings, an entity that didn't exist on any public registry. My stomach clenched. That one line spoke volumes. She stood behind me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Orion was a shell for procurement, she whispered. They used it to buy equipment for extraction missions. I clicked through to an email chain where her signature appeared alongside instructions to expedite delivery. The casual tone of her words belied their sinister implications. Marcus joined us with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. He set one beside me and pointed to a series of interconnected companies mapped out on his tablet. Each layer masks the real beneficiary, he explained. Aurora official paperwork never mentions the final recipients. I tapped on a subsidiary called Crescent Innovations, which funneled money into yet another offshore account. The more I uncovered, the more intricate the deception. I exhaled, eyes flicking between the lines. She's been the architect, I said softly, amazed at her dual mastery of finance and subterfuge. She looked away, guilt and pride warring in her expression. I thought I could control it, she confessed. But the lies multiplied faster than I could track them. I navigated to a folder labeled Family Trust. Inside, I found entries listing our names, mine and hers, as co-trustees, but with stipulations she'd never mentioned. Money earmarked for future generations was being redirected, siphoned off to accounts I couldn't trace. The betrayal pulsed through me like a shockwave. Marcus tapped the tablet, bringing up a timeline. They've covered their tracks by shifting funds every 90 days, he said. It's sophisticated, designed to look like routine rebalancing. Every click revealed another layer of deceit. Forged signatures, altered dates, unrecorded meetings. I closed the laptop and looked at her. This web, I said, voice raw, it's built on lies that touched everything. Our finances, our family, our future. She met my gaze, eyes glistening. Then we'll untangle it, she vowed. One strand at a time. Together, we rose, the trio bound by a shared resolve to dismantle the web of lies she'd once spun, and to rebuild the truth from its tangled threads. The hidden apartment's lights were off when I arrived, the only glow coming from the city skyline beyond the windows. I crept inside, senses heightened, and found her standing by the monitors, faces of Aurora's executives flickering in the darkness. She didn't turn as I approached. I confronted Marcus. I said, voice low. He thinks we should go public tonight. She exhaled sharply. Too soon. We need more, something that ties them directly to the operations. I stepped closer, closing the distance. We have it. The recordings from the warehouse, the offshore ledgers, the shipment manifests. She turned then, eyes reflecting lines of guilt and determination. That's still circumstantial. We need a confession. My jaw clenched. You have one, your own voice. In the recording the stranger gave you. Her gaze flickered. That was a trap. I shook my head. It was an invitation. You told him you'd reveal everything if he showed up. She closed her eyes. I panicked. The monitors behind her flickered off as I reached out and took her hand. I panicked too. A sudden creak echoed through the apartment. We both spun toward the door. Footsteps approached, deliberate, heavy. She drew in a breath, courage blooming. They found us. I felt my pulse thunder as the door clicked. She moved in front of me, arms outstretched as if to shield. The door opened a crack, revealing a man in a tailored suit, Aurora's security head, his face unreadable. End of the line, he said, voice calm but edged with steel. She drew back, meeting his gaze. You've underestimated me, she said, voice steady. I have everything you need for your final report. He stepped inside fully, eyes sweeping the room. I watched her hand hover over the folder on the table, our arsenal of truths. He smiled thinly. Perfect. His gaze landed on me. And you're her partner. You'll help her explain everything. I tightened my grip on her hand. Together, I said. He nodded once and turned to her. Time to finish this. As the apartment door closed behind him, the three of us stood in the dark, an unlikely alliance forged in shadows, about to confront the power they'd once served. The room felt smaller after the security head left, the door clicking shut like a judge's gavel. I exhaled sharply and crossed in my jacket pocket, pulling out my phone. "There's one more thing," I said, voice low. I thumbed through her call logs until I found an unusual entry. A missed call at 2:03 a.m. from an unknown number. She leaned in, brows knitting. "That's when I sent you the recording. But I deleted it afterward." I shook my head. "Not entirely." I tapped Show Deleted, and up popped a hidden voicemail icon. "We need to listen." She handed me the phone. I pressed play, and her voice crackled through the speaker. Only this time, it wasn't her talking. Instead, it was the security head briefing someone. Subject has the ledger. "If he's listened to your message, proceed with Plan B. Disable all backups and seal the apartment. Do not engage the husband." The line went dead. I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest. "Plan B," I whispered. She paled. "That means they intend to erase our evidence." And me. I stood, pacing as rain began to patter against the windows. "We can't let that happen." My fingers slid to the phone's voice recorder feature. "We need to trap them using their own words." She nodded, resolve hardening into action. I tapped the recording icon and set the phone on the table, speaker on. "Let's provoke them," I said. Together, we reviewed the folder of documents and found the ledger marked Project Helix final report. It detailed procedures for a full shutdown of all digital and physical copies. She took a breath and dialed the security head's number. The line rang once before he answered. "What is it?" His voice was crisp, authoritative. I held the phone between us. "We found Plan B," she said calmly. "You want to seal the apartment? Fine, but you got to confirm it on record." There was a pause, then his voice. "This is inadvisable." She pressed on. "Confirm you'll disable backups, seal this location, and engage Protocol B." His tone froze. "Yes, Protocol B will commence immediately." We exchanged a glance. "Thank you," I said, and ended the call. The rain drummed against the glass as we gathered the phone and ledger. Their confession was ours now, a final clue that would expose them and stop Plan B before the shadows swallowed us whole. The soft thud of footsteps echoed through the concrete corridor outside the hidden apartment. I froze, heart hammering, the ledger clutched in my hands. She stood beside me, eyes alert as the sound neared the steel door. I pressed my back against the wall and motioned for her to stay silent. The footsteps paused, then resumed, a slow, deliberate cadence that sent tremors through the floor. Through the peephole, I made out a polished shoe sole, then another. They carried authority. She flicked off the monitor lights, plunging us into near darkness. Only the faint glow from the keypad illuminated the outline of her figure. I inched toward the door, pressing my ear against the cool metal. Voices drifted from the other side, hushed but insistent. "I know they're here," a voice said. "Check all rooms." The second voice, a female, clipped and precise, replied, "They can't be far. This floor's sealed." My breath caught. They believed the apartment was empty. I turned to her, eyes wide. "We're exposed." She nodded and held up the phone. "Time to move." I slipped the ledger into her coat pocket while she deactivated the security feeds. Outside, the footsteps approached the door. She typed in a code, and the lock clicked open. We slipped into the stairwell, just as a hand reached for the doorknob. Our descent was swift and silent, two shadows weaving down the narrow flight. The emergency exit door loomed at the bottom, our only escape. She pressed the release button, and it swung open into the night air. We emerged into an alley slick with rain, neon lights from the streets, signage reflecting in puddles. The footsteps behind us quickened as the security team realized we'd vanished. I led the way down the alley, the ledger burning a hole through her coat. She followed closely, her footsteps matching mine. We reached the main road, where her car was parked under a flickering street lamp. She fumbled with her keys, hurrying, and I scanned the darkness for pursuers. She jumped into the driver's seat and fumbled with the ignition. The engine roared to life. As we barreled out of the alley and onto the slick pavement, the outline of black SUVs emerged at the alley's mouth. Agents in pursuit. She swerved onto the boulevard, tires hissing against the wet asphalt. I exhaled, the ledger's safe for now. Behind us, the footsteps echoed in the night, a promise that the chase had only just begun. The road stretched out before us, slick with rain, as we sped into the city's outskirts. Blue lights flickered in the rearview mirror, Aurora's security fleet giving chase. She tapped at her phone, routing us toward an old warehouse district. "I know a guy," she said, voice taut. "He owes me a favor." We turned off the main road and into a deserted lot where a rusted cargo truck waited. Its driver, a broad-shouldered man in a grease-stained coverall, slid out from behind the wheel, wiping his hands on a rag. He glanced at us with sharp, assessing eyes. "You Sarah's husband?" he asked, voice gravelly. She nodded, relief flickering across her face. "Jack, this is my husband. Our situation is urgent." His gaze flicked to me, then back to her. "Hop in." He yanked open the truck side door, revealing a hidden panel I hadn't noticed before. Inside, crates of tools, spare parts, and a rooftop console rigged with surveillance monitors and radio gear. She climbed in first, pulling me after her. Jack swung into the driver's seat and roared the engine to life. The truck lurched forward, barreling through a chain-link gate Jack cut with a bolt cutter. We coursed down narrow alleys as he whispered into a headset, "Alpha Team spotted. Reroute to Zone Delta." His words indicated a network I never knew existed, an underground of outsiders ready to help her cause. We emerged onto a back road where a sleek black sedan waited. Two figures in tactical gear climbed into its back seat. Jack opened the passenger door, and a woman slid in beside me. Short hair, determined gaze. "I'm Elena," she said quietly. "I handle extraction." She closed the door behind her, and the sedan peeled away from the warehouse yard. Jack tossed his bolt cutter into the truck's bed and took off in a different direction. I realized then that this wasn't a coincidence. Aurora's reach was vast, but so was the network she'd built. Elena leaned forward and handed me a manila envelope. "Evidence, routes, safe houses, everything you'll need for the next phase." Her expression was serious, but in her eyes I saw empathy. "We're with you." I looked at my wife, heart pounding. Against all odds, in the darkness of betrayal and danger, she'd found allies who believed in her truth. As the sedan carried us into the night, I understood that our fight had just gained its most unexpected and crucial support. She laid the manila envelope on the hotel room's low table, and we fanned the contents across the surface. Thumb drives, printed screenshots, handwritten notes. Each piece of evidence gleamed with purpose. I picked up a USB labeled _logs and inserted it into my laptop. Rows of time-stamped entries populated the screen. Communications between executives, shipment confirmations, even invoices for private aircraft. She pointed to a PDF labeled Black Ops Tariff. "This shows the true cost of those so-called research expeditions," she said. I opened it to find line items for equipment, personnel, and incidental expenses, a euphemism for bribes and dirty work. My stomach churned. Elena watched us quietly from the corner, her arms folded. "These," she said, tapping a photo, "were taken during off-the-books meetings." I zoomed in on the image, our security head handing over a briefcase in a dimly lit parking garage. Inside the case lay documents stamped top secret. I found a folder marked Client Profiles and opened it. Names of high-profile individuals scrolled down the page. Politicians, corporate magnates, foreign dignitaries, clients who'd paid handsomely for Aurora's discretion. Each entry included contact details, payment histories, and notes on special requests. I leaned back, head spinning. We have the network, the money trails, the secret meetings. This is everything. She nodded grimly. We also have witness statements. She handed me a stack of handwritten affidavits from contractors, testimonials describing midnight flights, unmarked shipments, and threats if they ever spoke out. I tapped the laptop screen to compile a master file. "Timeline next," I said. "We need to show how it all connects." She opened her notebook, flipping to a meticulously drawn chart. Phase 1, recruitment and funding. Phase 2, asset transfers. Phase 3, clandestine operations. Phase 4, silencing leaks. Marcus's earlier words echoed in my mind. Expose and accountability. I added a new layer to our file. Names of complicit executives set to testify with corroborating evidence. I closed the laptop and looked at her. With this, we can bring them down. She met my gaze, determination and relief mingling on her face. Let's finalize it. As dawn's light filtered through the curtains, we worked in tandem, organizing, labeling, cross-referencing, transforming scattered proof into a cohesive indictment. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the foundation of their downfall, and together we were building a case they couldn't ignore. The phone vibrated insistently on the table. Elena's rapid-fire texts. They've mobilized operatives. You need to move now. I glanced at the clock. 2:32 a.m. Our midnight deadline for submitting the dossier to Global Watchdogs was fast approaching. She grabbed her coat and the master USB drive. We'll split up, she said. I'll go to the secure terminal at the embassy. You get this to the press liaison. I nodded, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Outside, the rain had eased to a light drizzle, slicking the pavement with glinting reflections. I pocketed the USB and headed for my car, checking over my shoulder. Shadows darted between lampposts. Aurora's operatives on the hunt. The engine started with a roar, and I sped toward the downtown press office, weaving through near-deserted streets. Every red light felt like a lifetime. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as I calculated the minutes left. At the traffic circle, a black sedan edged beside me. My heart leapt. It could be them. I kept my speed steady, refusing to make a sudden move that might draw attention. The sedan hovered, then peeled away. I exhaled and pressed on. The press office's neon sign flickered above the door as I skidded into the lot. I dashed inside, drenched, and found the liaison's desk. He looked up bleary-eyed. You're late. I handed him the USB. It's everything. You have 30 minutes to publish, or they'll activate Plan B. Wipe our backups and erase this evidence. His eyes widened as I laid out the folders, photos, recordings. He nodded, urgency igniting. Behind me, sirens wailed, embassy security vehicles and Aurora's black SUVs converging downtown. I didn't wait to see who arrived first. I sprinted back to my car, raced to the embassy's secure terminal location I'd memorized, and texted her, "Go." She replied almost instantly, uploading. I glanced at my phone as a loop of code scrolled up the screen, files transferring to international oversight. Outside, I spotted the familiar silhouette of the security head approaching, rain dripping from his shoulders. The transfer bar hit 100%. I exhaled, relief and exhaustion mingling. A moment later, the embassy's lights flashed, green banner across the display. Evidence received and logged. I slipped away in the night before Aurora's agents could react. Adrenaline still coursing through me. We'd beaten the clock, this round, at least, and the truth was now beyond their reach. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the heavy drapes of the Aurora boardroom, painting the long mahogany table in gold. Executives sat in tense silence, eyes flicking to the blank screen at the end of the room. Their CEO stood at the head of the table, shoulders rigid. He's gone public, she said, voice calm but brittle. The dossier hit every major outlet at 2:45 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Governments are demanding explanations. She tapped a stack of printed headlines. Aurora scandal erupts, secret Black Ops fund exposed, executive arrests imminent. One board member cleared his throat. We have contingency protocols, he offered, but the CEO shook her head. Plan B failed. The evidence was in their hands before we could enact the data purge. She exhaled and folded her hands. We need to contain the damage, distance ourselves from the deals that cross legal lines. Publicly divest the Black Ops division, claim ignorance. Another executive, younger and sharper, shook her head. That's not enough. We need a scapegoat, someone to take the fall and show regulators we're cooperating. Murmurs rippled around the table. The CEO's jaw tightened. No, we own this. We fix this. She pressed a button, and the screen flickered to life, displaying her wife's recorded confession from the hidden apartment. The same footage the world had watched earlier. Gasps fill the room. Meanwhile, in a secure government office, analysts watched the same footage, lines of code confirming the authenticity of the leaks. Investigators whispered over transcripts, circling names for subpoenas and drafting warrants. One agent tapped her pen. "We have grounds for conspiracy charges," she said. "The evidence chain is airtight." Back at the boardroom, the CEO leaned forward. "We cooperate fully, turn over our files, and we negotiate immunity for the company. Any individual culpable must answer for themselves." She paused, gaze drifting to a vacant seat at the table. "And we offer full support to any employees who want to come forward. We start rebuilding from scratch." The youngest executive spoke up, voice shaking. "And what about him?" She meant her husband. The CEO's eyes softened for the first time. "He saved us," she said quietly. "He delivered the truth when no one else could. We owe him everything." In both chambers, corporate and governmental, the same reality settled in. The secrets behind closed doors had been torn wide open, and the path forward depended on that revelation more than any decision they could make now. A new chapter had begun. The rain rattled the courtroom windows as she rose to take the stand, a composed figure still bearing the weight of everything she'd uncovered. I watched from the gallery, heart pounding, as she cleared her throat and locked eyes with the panel of judges. When the lead prosecutor asked for her testimony, she spoke with unwavering clarity. She recounted her rise through Aurora Capital, the whispered warnings, the moment she first saw the ledger, and the night she recorded the security head's admission of Plan B. Her voice never wavered, even as she described the global network of shell companies and the human cost hidden beneath sterile finance reports. I saw faces in the courtroom shift, skepticism giving way to concern to alarm, each question peeling back another layer of deception. The defense attorney's pressure on motives tried to portray her as a rogue agent seeking revenge. But she stayed on message. It wasn't about vengeance, but about truth and accountability. When the judge asked why she'd trusted her husband to bring the evidence forward, she paused, looking directly at me. "Because he believed in the sanctity of our partnership," she said. My throat tightened as I rose and joined her at the lectern, producing my own folder of corroborating evidence, bank statements, emails, security footage. Together, we laid out the timeline, every transfer, every meeting, every attempt to silence us. The courtroom held its breath as the judge reviewed the evidence. Thunder rumbled outside, echoing the gravity of the moment. Finally, the judge leaned forward. "Aurora Capital is hereby found in contempt for willful concealment of illicit operations. Criminal charges will follow against named executives." The gavel fell, its sound reverberating through my chest. Relief and triumph washed over me as I glanced at her. No longer just my wife, but a champion of justice. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust at the steps, but we stood side by side, united. Outside the courthouse, the sky had cleared, pools of sunlight breaking through dark clouds. We stepped into the fresh air, blinking against the brightness. She wrapped her arm around my waist. "We did it," she whispered. I squeezed her hand and nodded. Together, in that moment of reckoning, our truth had shattered the lies behind closed doors, and our lives, forever changed, began anew under an open sky. Thought for a couple of seconds. The morning after the verdict, we returned home to an apartment stripped of tension. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, illuminating the evidence files stacked neatly on a coffee table. I moved them into a box labeled Archive, a tangible way to contain the chaos we'd unleashed on the world. She poured us coffee in mismatched mugs and offered me a tired smile. "I need to clear my desk," she said, voice steady. "No more late nights at Aurora's offices." I nodded, watching her fold paperwork into a crisp folder marked personal. Her transition from clandestine executive to private citizen felt both strange and liberating. We spent the day dismantling the remnants of her secret life. Marcus helped transfer encrypted files to a secure government vault, ensuring no rogue agent could resurrect the scheme. Elena coordinated with legal teams to support whistleblowers who'd come forward. Each call, each click, affirmed that our actions had ripple effects. Others were finding safety and accountability because we'd chosen to act. By afternoon, we ventured out together to Amelia's school. She hugged us both tightly, her graduation cap still stashed in her bag. "I've missed you," she said, eyes bright. We walked home through sun-dappled streets, the three of us a small island of calm amid a world that felt newly honest. Back at the apartment, she retrieved a blank notebook from a shelf. "I want to document everything," she said, fingertips brushing the pristine pages. "For Amelia, for the record." I watched her title the first page From Lies to Truth, then looked up at me with a soft grin. "Will you help me write it?" I closed my laptop and stood, crossing to her side. Every word. That evening, we ate dinner at our small kitchen table, leftover pasta and a simple salad. No screens, no secrets, just the quiet hum of normalcy. We talked about future ventures, her consultancy for ethical finance, my plan to expand community outreach through vet support groups. Real plans grounded in honesty. Later, as the city lights flickered on outside our window, she curled up on the sofa with a notebook in her lap. I draped an arm around her shoulders and pressed a kiss to her temple. In the soft glow of our reclaimed life, we picked up the pieces not as they had been, but as they could be, together, whole and free of shadows. Dawn broke gently over the skyline as we stood on the rooftop terrace of our building, the city unfolding beneath us like a promise. She wrapped her arms around me, and we watched the sun's first rays gild the glass towers. There were no corporate memos to decipher, no hidden meetings to unravel, just the pure clarity of morning. She let out a slow breath. "What now?" I traced patterns on her arm. "Whatever we choose." Her smile was soft, hopeful. We spoke of small dreams first, a weekend getaway without schedules or secrets, a gallery opening for Amelia's first commissioned piece, a community fundraiser to support families caught in crises like ours. Each plan felt like a seed planted in fertile ground. Later, at the local coffee shop where it all began, we shared a table by the window. She sipped a latte, eyes bright with ideas for her new consultancy, helping women build financial security through life's unexpected turns. I drafted flyers for the veteran support group I'd started, offering resources and camaraderie to those returning from service. Our work, once shrouded in shadows, now felt illuminated by purpose. Walking home through sunlit streets, we passed familiar shops and friendly faces, neighbors who nodded our way, unaware of the storm we'd weathered together. It was comforting, the ordinary breathing life into our extraordinary chapter. At home, she unpacked a simple box, gifts from supporters around the world who'd followed her story. Letters from whistleblowers finding courage, from friends saying thank you, from strangers inspired to speak truth. She read them aloud, voice catching at each message of hope. I watched her absorb the gratitude, the connection we'd forged reaching far beyond our own lives. As evenings settled, we prepared dinner side by side. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the kitchen, laughter flowing easily between us. No more whispers or alarmed glances, just the rhythm of two people who had rediscovered each other after a journey through deception. After the meal, we stepped onto our balcony, city lights flickering below. She leaned into me, her head resting on my shoulder. "A new beginning," she murmured. I kissed her temple and nodded, the quiet night echoing our unspoken agreement. Together, we turned toward tomorrow, ready to write the next pages of our lives. Honest, bold, and entirely our own.